Alex, if you only had 1 minute to give music artists the best music marketing advice you possibly could, what would you say? 1 minute on the clock.
I will stick with Meta Ads marketing advice for this, and it is the most important thing to test in your ad campaigns are the song, whether it's parts of the song or just the song itself. It's number one. It's also the hardest thing to test because to test a new song, you have to spend a month or more creating one. The second most important thing is the visual. Also harder to test than some other aspects of the ad campaign. A little bit easier than the song, but it's number two. And then the third most important thing, even though it's still necessary to have it right, is the structure of the campaign and the targeting things. Those, super easy to change. You can do it in like 5 minutes. You can't create a whole new visual in 5 minutes or create a whole new song in 5 minutes. But if you want to have the best possible ad results, it's important to test starting with the song, then going to visual, then going to campaign structure. Most people do it the opposite way, and they get subpar results.
When you've seen people have campaigns that are going awful, and then you're trying to fix them and make them not awful, what's the number one most common reason their campaign is performing bad?
Most common reason is that people don't seem to be connecting with the song.
I think that's overall true too. I mean, like, there's definitely a lot you can do to make a given song do better. But, when we've had this where we launch a campaign and like instantly out the gate, it's $3 a conversion. And pretty much immediately, like we'll let it run, but it's like pretty much right away, we're probably going to have to pivot to a different song.
Yeah. And if pivoting to a new song isn't an option, then I would just go down the list and say, well, something can probably be done with the visual component to make it perform a lot better. And even though it's not as important as the song, it's still extremely important, and you can cut costs by a ton by having the right visual with the right part of the song in front of the right people.
What's the biggest change you've done in a campaign? Like you've taken the song that was doing like $2 and brought it down to blah. Like, what's the most dramatic you've turned a ship around?
There are definitely campaign examples that have been close to $1 per conversion and have come down all the way to 20 cents per conversion, and that is really awesome. But even when I am able to do that through marketing, visual, like magic, it doesn't necessarily mean that the song's still going to perform super well on Spotify or other streaming services, and usually that's the case. Even if I can bring it down to what would be considered a great campaign cost, it doesn't always perform that. It almost never. And I can't personally think of a single example where I've been able to do that and still have amazing results on Spotify. They're just better than they were at $1 per conversion.
You run a profitable record label, and you've been posting about this on YouTube and Threads and LinkedIn, and we always get the wonderful spicy comments when you share that, like, I spent $5,000 on this thing over the past X amount of time. We have this many streams, and you have all the people in the comments saying, "Oh, great! So you made $50 and you spent 5,000 or whatever, right?"
Yeah.
But you actually run a label that doesn't just burn cash. Like, you're not losing money,
right?
I guess walk us through, like, on the label side. What's the strategy? How do you promote the music? And since you've been already public about what are the financials, I guess usually I wouldn't ask that, but you've already been public about it. So if you could share some hints around the financial side, that'd be awesome.
Of course. The first thing that's super important to clarify is whenever I say it's a profitable record label, it's like it makes money, but all of the money gets immediately reinvested. So I'm like, no money is being taken out of it. So it's constantly being forced into a state of not being profitable because, okay, great, maybe I've made $3,000 in a month, but then that $3,000 immediately goes back into promoting it more. So I just want to make sure that I don't get misquoted by people who are watching this thinking that I'm talking about like insane profit margins or something.
But like, you could not do that.
Correct.
You could just keep your initial investment the same and then cash out all the profit.
Yes.
Even Spotify did that for the first 15 years or whatever. Every shred of dollar they made, they reinvested. In fact, they would spend more than they made, and they'd be in debt every year. And now finally, after 15, 20 years of doing that, they're finally like, okay, we have all the users, let's make money, right? So it's not a crazy strategy. And I think a lot of artists should do that with their own music instead of cashing out the money, just whatever you make, reinvest it.
Yeah, and that is definitely true. I could just stop spending money this month, and for at least the next 3 months, the check would be the exact same. After that, there'd probably be some decline because I'm not actively promoting things, but it could just keep on going for years, still bringing in royalties. But I want to make it a lot bigger, so that's why I don't take anything out. And the general strategy is everything right now is built on meta ad promotion. I promote about a third of my monthly budget, which is typically I'll spend like $3,000 to $4,000 in a month. A third of it's going to be for my label's playlist. It's just one playlist. It's music that Twitch streamers can use on their live streams, and so I run ads to that playlist. That playlist grows from the ads. It also grows from a little search engine action on Spotify, and those Twitch streamers play the songs publicly on their Twitch streams, and all of that results in a playlist that essentially breaks even every single month. So I started out with just doing that and growing that playlist up until around spending $1,000 or so on it per month, and then I pulled back on that. And then since that point, which was last year around August, I've put more cash into individual song promotion. So a third of the budget goes to promoting the playlist with meta ads, and then 2/3 goes to promoting individual songs with meta ads.
The genre that your label operates in is EDM and lo-fi. Is that playlist? Because I think before you had both. You had an EDM for Twitch streams, then you also had a lo-fi for streams, but now it's one. So did you find one was just the dominant winner and you just focus solely on that one?
I wanted to focus on one because it just made the branding and the messaging just so much easier. So I just decided I was going to go with EDM instead of lo-fi. So I don't accept lo-fi submissions anymore, and I'm not releasing lo-fi. It's just EDM now, and I've pretty much pivoted away from spending anything on the lo-fi playlist.
Gotcha. Yeah, and for everyone watching, I believe you gave me a link where people could submit demos to you. That'll be down below. So if you want to part of Spiration Music,
yeah. If you don't want to have to do any work or spend any money on your marketing, I'll do it all for you, and I will happily go broke doing it.
And if I recall, you do 50-50 splits.
Yes.
And you do typically individual song contracts, right? So you're not locking in artists for like multi-year deals, right?
Exactly. The commitment is just for that one song. It's a 10-year exclusive license, which means we don't take ownership of the master recording. You keep your ownership, but we license it, and you can't release it elsewhere for a period of 10 years. And during those 10 years, we can sub-license it. We collect all of the royalties on it, except for publishing if you've already got publishing figured out. And then we recoup the money we invest into the promotion before making the split. But once the song breaks even, we split everything 50-50.
Nice. Yeah. And you know, if you're watching and you've never heard of any label contracts whatsoever, that is a lot of those terms are common. But also this deal is on the better end of deals. Like a lot of majors, for example, will own the master. Like you hear about Taylor Swift buying back her masters for like $350 million or whatever. That's because the label owned the masters. When you have a deal that's like this, that's a licensing deal, the artist eventually retains ownership of their masters, and then they could partner back with the label, or they could partner with a different label, or do whatever they want, which is good. I think that's what labels should do nowadays, because like back in the day, labels were taking huge financial risks in front, like, you know, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars developing artists, so like they had to like have something to own. But now labels don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And if a label's taking your masters, they should be taking a huge risk, because that's like a huge thing to own.
Exactly. You know? And so if it's just one song for a short period and there's no ownership transfer at all, it's usually a much more attractive offer for an artist. And for me as the label, that also means that I don't bend over backwards to do the artist's bidding. So we're focused on promoting the song on streaming services, not helping with touring, not selling merchandise. All of that is still up to the artist and whatever other teams that they want to work with. This is strictly we'll get people to listen to your song on streaming services, and hopefully a lot of people.
Now, for people who are watching this that maybe are starting their own label, how do you keep track, especially with the playlists and all these different artists, like of how much money you've allocated to each project? You have a pretty decent volume of music. Like one, I guess, first question would be how many songs you signing a month, and two, how do you keep track of like all the money you spent marketing all these artists, and then it's a lot of work making ad campaigns for that many things. So I guess some insight on that would be cool for all the label peeps out there.
Yeah, it's 4 to 8 songs per month right now. The total catalog is somewhere between 300 and 400. I can't quite remember. And I keep track of all of it with a software called eddy.app. And they handle, essentially, I put in the information about the contract. I add the details of the person getting paid, what the split is. And then anytime I have an ad campaign that's running and it finishes, I'll screenshot it, upload it as a receipt, put the amount in, and then the software does all of the tracking. Anytime my distributor sends a sheet of sales data, I just upload that sheet and it figures everything out for me. So luckily I can do it as one person because the software does the heavy lifting and all the calculations.
What type of artists do you typically get reaching out to you? Obviously they're EDM artists, but like are they artists who already have some momentum, or are they artists who are just starting off?
It's both. And I'd say most artists are within like their first 10 releases. A few, a small handful, it will have been their first release. But typically for an artist like that, it's just their first release because they haven't made anything public. They usually have made a ton of music, uploaded it to YouTube and SoundCloud. But most artists that I work with definitely are like under 500 monthly listeners. So it's really nice because it's not too difficult to take them from that point and then get them up to thousands or tens of thousands of listeners, given their campaigns perform well.
For the playlist that you use to promote, you market it as being this like Twitch safe, YouTube safe, DMCA free type of thing, which means that YouTubers and or streamers could use it in their streams and their videos and stuff like that. Have you seen any evidence of that actually promoting the project? Because on one hand, you're marketing to those people, so they're listening to it all day on stream. But I would think the people who are watching those streams, at some point, they're going to hear a song they like, and they're going to Shazam it, and then they're going to go listen to it, or they're going to find the playlist the streamer's streaming and go. So I don't know. Have you seen? Do you have any metrics on like? Has there been kind of this like organic growth through word of mouth or from streamers?
I wish that I could know that, because that would be incredible information to have. The only thing I know is that people definitely use it on their streams a lot, because I get a pretty good stream per listener ratio on the playlist, and so they're sitting down and streaming for 3 hours, and that playlist is what they're using. And then there's somewhere around like 35,000 Shazams. I just don't know if those come from Twitch or if those come from people Shazamming the ads, which happens more than I would have thought, or just people Shazamming like the organic content. But organic content is not a huge part of the current success.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I don't even know how you would track something like that. The only way I could honestly think of tracking that would ruin the whole thing, because it'd be opting it into Content ID.
Yep.
Because then you would see exactly what videos are using all the music and what streams, but then it would demonetize all those videos, and then all those streamers would never use any of your music ever.
That is right.
So I think last time we talked about it, your previous strategy was you had this playlist you were running, you would add them to the playlist, you would see like if any of them kind of bubbled up as like good contenders to promote, and then you would dive into it, do a big campaign. So you shifted now to doing a campaign for every song. I'm guessing that's been better?
Yes. The reason for the shift is the label's just generating enough revenue to warrant that kind of spend. Whereas before I did not have I did not have the revenue to like test out a $100 campaign on every song. Now it does work better. I typically, once the song has spent $100, I decide if I want to keep it going. If I decide to keep it going, I let it run up to $500 and then stop it there.
Mm.
And so I'm constantly taking these benchmarks of ad spend and deciding what to do next. The $100 mark is the first one. And it's really hard to say. I don't currently have set in stone rules for when I decide it's good enough to run. The most important thing is that it's getting around, like, if it looks like this song can be a 15,000 stream per month song based on a $500 campaign, that's the main thing I look for. Because if I can do a $500 investment and then that song spits off $50 or so a month in revenue, I can make the money back in 8 to 12 months. And then in the second year, by the 24-month mark, it will have doubled, as long as the streaming volume stays somewhat constant. So that's the most important thing.
Right. That's a good point. So you're looking to see if you can get $50 a month. You make your money back in a year if that's the case, and then you have the record for 10 years. So long term, I mean, obviously it'll decay over time, unless the artist pops off. Then you might, let's say one of your artists becomes the next Deadmau5 or something, right? Like that song might end up generating millions of streams and generating the label thousands of dollars. What percentage of tracks that you release do you find turn into ones that become $500 campaigns?
It's probably half of them, which is a fairly good rate.
Yeah. That's an astounding hit rate. Just, we run agency ads, right? So it's like, 50% of campaigns don't end up amazing, typically.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing the criteria here is you're being super selective on what you sign.
Right. If the agency model is so different from the label model in that way, because with the agency model, someone wants to promote this song, and as long as it's not like way out of the agency's ability to do so, the agency will accept because they want to promote that song, and so that's just how that works. And with the label, because there's no financial commitment necessarily from the artist, I get a really high volume of demos, and I can just choose, like, I listen to probably 100 or so demos per day, but there's only 4 to 8 releases a month. So I'm just taking what I like the most out of all of that volume. And if anyone is going to be that selective, they'll probably find that their results on average are a lot better. And for me, I just have to have results that are better, or else I can't grow at all. For a lot of artists, the purpose of running their ads may be to get shows and to sell merch, or to find fans that they can engage later on down the funnel. For mine, it's like my business model is streaming, and that's by choice. I just like that game, and so I have to treat it differently than a lot of artists would running ads or agencies.
It's true, because if an artist is losing, a lot of campaigns won't profit when you're running ads to promote songs. But if you're an artist, that doesn't matter, because let's say it makes back 50% of the money over a 3-year period. So you've made back half of it there, and then all the campaigns you run, not only have recouped 50%, if that's what you can't play a show if you don't have any fans. You can't sell merch if you don't have fans. You can't have a Patreon if you don't have fans. And you're not going to get collabs if you don't have fans. And so for some artists I work with, the whole reason they run ads promoting their streaming is to get shows, or get bigger shows, or get higher paying shows. And that's where they actually make the money. So they don't care, like, streaming, whatever, like, we'll lose whatever here. It doesn't matter. If that gets us to the point where we can play these shows, it was worth the investment. But you don't have that benefit.
Exactly.
So you have to make that part work.
Yep. And a lot of running the ads over the past, definitely the past year, because that's been the most amount of ad spend I've done of my own money. And so far, my label has had a total spend of around $40,000, which is so much more than I thought I'd ever be able to spend on it. It's been able to get that high because it's growing alongside of the ad spend. So I didn't just like start with 40K in the bank. I was running $180 a month in ads, and that's just stepped up over time. But if anyone is trying to, like, if their game is streaming and they want to make the money back in streaming, what I've learned so far over the past couple of years is that a pretty decent rate of return to look for, and this, I'm sure the rate gets better the bigger the label is and the more reach they have with different artists, but it's been around like 10% of the lump sum investment in ads comes back per month from the song. So like if I spend $500 on a song, I want that song to be making $50 per month on average, and I'd like that to go for about 2 years, because that is, I believe, if I'm not doing mental math wrong, doubling the initial investment in a 2-year period. And it doesn't happen. It's not like I can do that on every song, but because I test out enough songs, the majority of the budget will kind of form around the songs that have the most promise. So there's a handful of songs in my library that have had thousands of dollars spent on them. There's one that's almost up to 4,500. And so that keeps the average rate of return at or around that 10% mark. So a lot of them still don't do that amazing, but because there's some that really, really pull the weight of the rest of the library, I can just allocate the ad spend accordingly and try to force that 10% or better return.
That makes sense. I usually tell people that if they're going to release 10 songs in a year, that 2 of them are going to be amazing,
Right.
2 of them are going to suck, and the other 6 are going to be in some type of bell curve,
Yep.
typically. And that's assuming that the music's great, too. Like, if the music sucks, it's going to be worse than that. If they're super talented for whatever reason, like I know this group that they literally write songs for like Justin Bieber and Walk the Moon and other huge artists for a living, and so like for them their hit rate's much better. But for most artists that are still great, it's like you get 10 to 20% of your songs crush it. 60% do good, fine, all right, and then 20% just completely just dumpster fire.
Just eat it. And it's great. I have not learned how to better predict that at all. Like one may assume that I can listen to a song and maybe have an idea of how it's going to do. I am wrong so often. And some of my I want to say least favorite releases, some of the releases I have done through my label that I just thought were okay, and I was on the edge, I like just barely decided to release it, have done so extremely well. And some of my favorite releases have flopped so hard. And from that, I try not to be attached to my label songs, but it's helped me for when I release a song of my own. I can be so much more relaxed about releasing it because I just know this form of marketing doesn't work on every song. Doesn't mean the song isn't good. Doesn't mean people aren't going to love it. And so I try not to be attached, and that's been a really helpful lesson for me to learn. And I just try to pick songs that I personally like, and that makes my job a lot easier.
Same. I haven't been able to predict it. What I have found I've gotten good at over just like, I don't know, thousands of campaigns I've worked on or whatever, is guessing out of a set of videos which couple of videos are going to do the best. That I know I've gotten better at over the last 1,000 campaigns, because just, I don't know, in the last few months, the amount of times I've run a campaign and the winning ad, the client ends up being like, oh, that's the ad you said was going to do best. It ends up being the winner.
Yep.
I still don't get it right all the time, but that I'm getting better at. The song thing, though, complete crapshoot.
Yes.
It's infuriating, because sometimes you get, the best song you've heard in years and it fails. And then you get a song that you were borderline going to reject and it does great. And it's kind of soul sucking to a degree, because it's kind of like, now they're not horrible songs. It's just they're not masterpieces. Right. And I've used this example recently. Teach Me How to Dougie. No one's going to argue that that's a good song. And I mean, one person said in the comments, the beat was fire, which yes, the beat was fire. It had a dance, but it was a marketable song. It was a catchy, marketable song. It was not a objectively good, well written song. Like Soldier Boy too, like same thing. Like no one's gonna say that's a masterpiece. That song, those songs probably outperformed like so many songs that won like awards for being amazing
Yeah,
songs and that people love and consider the best songs ever, just because they were catchy, stupid things that made people laugh and have fun. You know?
exactly. And I try to catch myself whenever I'm like saying, "Oh, performance was bad because the song isn't good." I'm trying to be more specific and say performance wasn't good because people through this medium aren't connecting with the song right away. Because it's like
Yeah,
it is crazy because I there are songs that are just painstakingly written and composed and they just don't do well, but they could get all of the accolades and the like appreciation from critics, and it's really rough for that
yeah.
reason.
So a lot of people that have labels end up, that I know at least, end up going with places that take a percentage of royalties. So they'll go with like Symphonic as a partner, or they'll go with Vidya, or they'll go with the Orchard, or the AWOL, or there's a list of like distributors that take commissions. The trade off of that usually it's like between 10 and 20% what the distributor will take, but the trade off is you usually get dedicated support. Like I have some artists that I distribute through the Orchard, and the support there is pretty great. Like hopping on Zoom calls is not crazy to do. Like within a week or two, hop on a Zoom call with someone of the company. Like that's kind of normal at the Orchard. Um, and Vidya, you can let people, you can call and email. You have a dedicated account rep and a few others as well. But they take that cut, but they can pitch your songs in editorials. So there's like all this push and pull. I don't know if there's a route now take a cut, and two, do they offer any like? I'm guessing no, because you said you kind of still think they're not that great. But
They take a cut if you are on a free tier, so that you can release music there for free, and they take 15%. But I was not willing to do a distribution company that took a percent. I did talk with a couple, like a couple larger ones, and they none of them were able to give me any sort of data that said yes, we take the 30 or the 20%, but you make more overall because you're with us. It was always like, yeah, we take the 20%, but we pitched the music, and that it was very unconvincing to me. And I didn't think that they would be able to provide enough to warrant that amount, because if I were giving up 20%, that would be an extremely high yearly payment if I was looking at it from
yeah,
that end. And until one can tell me that they do in fact help you make more than the amount they take, yeah, I'm gonna sit out and just use this one. Maybe one day have my own. That'd be nice, because then I could
yeah,
do the support on it, or someone on my team
yeah.
could
That
if I had a team later.
yeah, that's why I am not on any of those paid ones for my own music, because I find the percentage thing kind of you know it makes sense for some artists, but usually you have to have a certain amount of momentum before that ends up actually being worth it. Because like they see the dollar signs,
Yeah,
and they're like, oh, let's go fight for this artist's behalf, because if we like they're already making us, you know, if we're taking 15% and they're making $100,000 a year, we're making $15,000 a year. So that's enough for them to justify like every release they send us, we'll go pitch it to maybe not even just Spotify, but Spotify playlists, Apple playlists, Amazon playlists, etc. And I've seen people get really good results for that. The problem is there's no
yeah,
guarantee, and they'll never put anything into writing. And I know people have had bad experiences with some labels that, not labels, distributors that have offered that. Like, oh, we're going to do this for you, we'll take a cut, but we're going to pitch an editorial, and then like they sign with the distributor, customer support just vanishes, they never get any replies, and now they're contractually obligated to keep it with them for a year, and then it ends up being a dumpster fire.
yeah. That sounds
So that is the
horrible.
dark side of it.
There was one who offered. It was, I think it was no split, no royalty split, but they still required that you sign one of those like keep it for a year thing, and I also didn't love that. They also use Audio Salad as their back end, so even though they weren't taking a cut of royalties, I know Audio Salad did, and I
Mm,
just don't want to have to sign up for anything that would keep me there for a year, especially if the purpose of signing up was just to test. And I'm done. I'm so tired of moving the catalog around. I'm sticking with this one until I have someone else on my team who can, if we need to change distributors, they can do it. I'm not going to do it again.
Migrating 350 songs is no joke. Like that's like weeks of work, honestly, probably. Not full time. Well, could be on it. You could probably do someone full time for a week to migrate 350 releases.
Yep.
Like it would be that brutal. I know someone who owns a label that does some really good streaming volume, like 10 million streams a month, and he's trying to migrate to a distributor. And not only are they offering him better rates and like cash advances and stuff, but they're offering to migrate the catalog for him.
Yeah, that does sound nice.
So that can be an option at some point. And I actually know even not at his level, because his level, like, he's at 4 million monthly listeners or something. So like there's a lot of money there for the distributor, and a lot of them have tools where they can like mass export and import like ISRCs and stuff, and you give them like a digital file with all the music, and then they handle everything.
That's
but
nice. That's super cool.
I know someone who did that with like 50,000 monthly listeners. Like I think it was actually Two Lost had some like tool to help him migrate his whole like 100-song catalog over.
It's compelling.
Sweet. Well, you want to apply Spiration Music? There's the kitty. There's a link down below if you want to submit a demo. There's a link to Alex's booking calendar if you want to check it out, and a link to your video on how to promote music, or it's a playlist rather, because you have a channel, and that'll be linked down below, and maybe another social. What's your best social media site?
If people are looking to see how I run campaigns and like the marketing stuff, they should check YouTube long form videos. That's the one to check out. If they want to listen to the music, I'd say Instagram is the best one to check out.
Cool, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure as always.